Hi, everybody. Welcome to the May 25th, 2018, YourLIVINGBrand.live show. It's Wednesday. It's 10 o'clock in the morning, and this is going to be another great show. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Ben Baker, and my company is Your Brand Marketing. Now, Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, what do? We consult, we provide workshops and keynotes on brand, message, market, vision, and value. Now, what does that mean? What we do is we tell your story, and we help you tell your story. Because when people understand who they are, what they do, why they do it, who they specifically do it for, and why those people care, magic can happen. Because people want to know how you can help them. And if you can't tell an engaging story, if you can't differentiate yourself, if you can't give people reason to stand up, pay attention, and look at the solutions you're providing, all you are is another commodity. And that's the last thing you want to be. Now, every Wednesday at 10 o'clock, we introduce you to another company. This show is all about how do different companies add value. And this week, I have Pat Kelahan from H2M Architects coming on board to tell us about customer service and customer engagement in the insurance industry. Now, Pat is a veteran. He's been in this for decades, and he believes that it's not just technology, it's not just policy and procedure and process that make a good insurance industry. It's people, and it's customer service, and it's customer engagement. So sit back, listen to the interview, and I'll be back. Pat, it is great seeing you again. Thanks for being on the show.
My pleasure, Ben. How are things on the west coast of Canada this week?
You know what? Things are good. The world is a great place. People are buying, people are interested, and and people are seeing value in what we're doing. So, like you, it's always an adventure. It's always a different day, and it's a matter of going out there and figuring out, okay, what kind of trouble can we get into today?
That's right. And I don't have any snow to shovel like the East Coast since we're recording on a day after a nor'easter. So.
Which is a beautiful thing.
It is a beautiful thing.
Which is a beautiful thing. So let's get into this. I mean, this show is all about how do you differentiate? Because you know what? There's millions and millions of businesses out there. There's millions of companies out there that do similar things. And it's a matter of understanding what are the little things that companies do that make them different, that make them special, that make them unique to a certain audience. And why does that audience care about them? So tell me the story about H2M Engineering. Tell me the story about Pat, how you got there, what you do, why you do it, who you do it for, and more importantly, why do those people care about you?
Yeah, well, get a little background. I kind of working backwards. I've been with H2M for 7 months, right about now. We'll set that aside for a second. I worked about 20 years with Allstate Insurance, property claims, property claim management, audit, and such. A lot of customer service. Right. Prior to that, the federal government disaster program. So seeing a lot of people in very adverse situations. Mm-hmm. Traveling, visiting folks. Prior to that, construction. Prior to that, cell phone retail. Prior to that, big box retail. Mm-hmm. So, and age 15, I was working in a small grocery store in Syracuse. So it's really 4 decades of customer service that I've been involved in all different ways, but really they've all touched, they're all customer service things. I wasn't a widget maker, never have been that way. Not that that's bad. So all along doing these customer service deals, my most important job is being a father, have 7 children. And
7. That in itself is a job.
And my job mostly is to support my wife, who's a great mom, and she works, so it's a great partnership. But even that's customer service, keeping the family going. So about 7 months ago, trying to find a work-life balance.
Right.
I approached Rich Human. He's the president, CEO of H2M. And Mike Gentil, he's senior vice president, and we were I've worked with them. I had worked with them 10 plus years,
right?
With Allstate. So
they would have been a supplier of yours, correct?
They were a service provider for Allstate. H2M is an engineering firm, very large engineering firm, but the piece that touches insurance deals with asbestos and mold and fire investigations, cause and origin, environmental, indoor air quality appraisal, really good services for insurance carriers.
Right.
And they're located out of Long Island. And I approached Rich and Mike and said, look, you guys are a great company. And I think, I could provide an inside perspective from an insurance carrier side that would help H2M with continuing on their business and to grow their business.
Right.
At the time, I suggested perhaps Florida, and Rich said, well, maybe someday, but we're looking to expand in upstate New York. What do you think? So we talked back and forth, and being a very frank speaker and them being frank speakers, we came to an agreement, and I came on board. And the most striking thing is they came up with a title called Forensic Market Strategist. Forensic, of course, being the division of the engineering, forensics. Right. The market is their descriptor for the market that they deal with for forensics. But the strategist, that described my role. Part working with insurance carriers and staff at H2M, but also looking forward in time to see what's happening in the insurance world. Because if the forensic market relies upon insurance carriers for their business, and they do, and Mike Gentil over 20 years developed a great relationship with a lot of carriers.
Right.
You need to know what's happening in your customer's world so that you can serve them better and react to what their needs are.
Right.
And that's half of my role is being involved with that. Obviously, that half of the role is how you and I became acquainted.
Absolutely.
Much more involved in what's happening in the networking amongst insurance worlds and marketing and such, which of course comes to this podcast. So along the line, finding out that the big carriers are going a different way, innovation and insurtech is the catchphrase, the byword, the direction things are going, and trying to see how do I fit H2M into that future.
Right. Because
engineering is a whole different world than insurance, a whole different culture. The speed of how things go, how they interact with customers is different than what an insurance carrier does. So trying to bridge that. So there's my piece. There's where I fit in. I'm the inside guy, the liaison, that types, to seeing what's going on to help H2M recognize new ways of doing business.
Right.
And thankfully, they've been great, allowing me a lot of latitude to do that. And I think it's going to pay off very handsomely down the road. So there's the hip assessment.
I think it's interesting is, you talk about four decades plus of customer service. And, I'm listening back to your resume of all the things that you've done, the 20 years of Allstate, the disaster relief before that, H2M now. And it all has to do with the fact that wherever you've been, wherever you're dealing with stressed out people. You may not be dealing with them directly, but the industry that you're in has an enormous amount of people that are living under adverse situations. They've had fires, they've had floods, there's earthquakes, there's a million different things that could have happened in their life. I mean, even from the thing of just a tree falling on the roof of their house and making a great big gap. You're dealing with people that are under an enormous amount of stress. And the insurance business is set up today, from what I see, is set up to, here's a claim, here's some money. And the human factor is what seems to be missing. And you and I talk about this all the time. We talk about the human factor of the insurance business, whether it's insurance technology, whether it's straight out, the insurance industry. It's getting us back to a human-to-human understanding and a human-human relationship, because in the end, all businesses are about that. All businesses are about understanding the customer's, aches and pains and helping fix them. So how do you guys go about working through that part of the business to be able to make sure that, that the human side of the business is not neglected?
Well, I'm going to preface dealing with how H2M deals with their clientele by, many years ago when I started in insurance, there was a really smart guy, and he didn't come up with the phrase, but he always stressed, you adjust the customer first.
Right.
All right. So in the insurance world, you could have claims from a little leak in the ceiling to a totally destroyed house.
Yep.
But the person with the small leak in the ceiling could be more upset about that in their perspective than the person who lost the house.
Yeah.
And you need to understand, how is that loss affecting the person? You know, the person with the leak in the ceiling, they're living in that house, and every day that piece of water stain in the ceiling is making them distressed.
Oh, it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger.
Or just there.
Or
maybe
there.
Their house is pristine. As opposed to the person who loses the entire house, there's nothing you can do. You can't live there. You're somewhere else. You recognize it's this terrible thing. So understanding how the person with the spot in the ceiling reacts to it, then you can personally react to how you're providing your service.
Right.
So taking that concept into all the different businesses that anybody could be in, if you see how your business customer needs to deal with whatever they're dealing with, then you can adapt how you're dealing with them to help them. If you're helping them do what they do, you're a win.
Right.
Right. If someone's dishwasher fails, they go into the store. They're not looking for a dishwasher. They're looking for clean dishes.
Right.
Right. They could hand
I just went through this. Exactly.
Yeah. Right. So you don't care if it's a dishwasher or if they send somebody there 24 hours a day that you don't have to pay for, as long as your dishes are clean.
Exactly.
So in the engineering world, if our customer is the insurance adjuster and the tree hits the house and they're not sure about the full scope, if you understand that adjuster needs you to be there promptly, you need a detailed report, they need it all done pretty quick because their customer needs it. You understand what that adjuster's going through. You understand they've got a dollar amount that they need to manage, not control, but manage.
Right.
So all of these things, understand what your customer needs, and your brand will be built strongly because you're working not from what you need to do. Oh, I've got to get this assignment done. I've got to move to the next one. No, you're dealing with that one in that person's eyes. And it's not new what I'm saying. It's the oldest thing in the book. But if you live it every day, if you're a manager and you've got staff and you know that John Smith is having some difficulties with getting people out of his house to school, and you say, okay, why don't you start 10 minutes late? Well, John Smith is going to perform much better because
absolutely
you're recognizing what his needs are. You know he'll still get the work done, and you don't have to say, well, 8:30 to 5, that's what we schedule. Nah, you adjust that. You adjust everybody first, and that's how. I don't care who you're dealing with, whether you're in retail or you're in insurance or engineering or whatever. If you know what's your customer's trigger point, you're going to build your brand as being someone who can be trusted and someone who understands.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, you get what you need, they get what they need. And that's how I've really approached it, Ben, throughout 4 decades. I'm not the smartest guy in the room, but really, I mean, I'm smart enough to get by, smart enough to get on your podcast, but trust and understanding what they need is what I see drives my brand, if you want to use that phrase.
Right. So, I mean, you talk about InsurTech, the new technology that's driving the insurance business.
Yep.
What do you see are the benefits of the InsurTech, industry, and what do you see are the challenges that, that they're facing moving forward?
Well, if you look at InsurTech, it's an offshoot of the financial technology.
Right.
Right. FinTech 5, 7, 8 years ago. And in finance, it's all numbers. It's just balance sheets. It's profit and loss. It's moving the data faster. And then smart people said, oh, insurance is information and it's money. I'll bet we can do this better. So in my research over the last 6 or 7 months, InsurTech is heavy on the tech. All right, let's understand underwriting, pricing, distribution, because those are data that you can move and manipulate and such. They're applications. But what I see is missing there, and you and I have spoken of this at length, is most insurance is in big companies' hands, incumbents, legacy companies, et cetera. And it's a huge market share there. And the customers are happy with it because that's what it's been for decades.
Right.
So if you change the technology up front and you do all that cool stuff, there's this enormous administrative organizational bureaucracy that exists
Mm-hmm.
and has developed over decades. If you're not adapting that, then the technology piece is fine. You can
Mm-hmm.
plug in this and that. But the customer, at the end of the day, most customers aren't going to push an application and get their totally destroyed house paid for.
Right.
Most adjusters, their goal is, I need to get this claim handled and moved. But now they're dealing with, all right, but I've got all these requirements that my company needs me to do. I've got to toggle this toggle. I've got to send this report up. I've got this regulatory thing to take care of. And there's the big piece in InsurTech that has yet to be addressed. And what I mean by that, it's this administrative burden.
Mm-hmm.
That is the friction which will inhibit InsurTech from going from the distribution piece to the customer's hands.
Right.
Right? The customer doesn't care what works in between. The adjuster and the administrative people do. And at this point, one of my favorite phrases is innovate from the customer backwards.
Right.
Dig in, find out what's really inhibiting the adjuster from dealing with the customer.
Mm-hmm.
And often it's simple admin. I
Right.
was at a meeting in Toronto with my friends from Symbility, great folks.
Mm-hmm.
It's free advertising for them. And one of their panelists said, a big insurance, life insurer said, we held a one-day identify your problems session. And all their staff said, oh, here's all the little things I don't really need to do.
Right.
They spent the week, did some artificial intelligence, some robotic chatbot stuff, and just machine learning or whatever you want to call it. They eliminated a lot of those barriers. There's two things that happen. One, you get rid of the barriers.
Right.
And two, the employees are empowered to think, hey, we have something we're doing here.
Right.
Now, what did that cost them? You can't call that tech so much. It's more trust and understanding that the people that work for you knew what they were doing. And that's how I see InsurTech. A lot of smart people doing things, but have we gotten to the point where we're eliminating the barriers to the customer's understanding that it's improvement? I'm not so sure.
Right. I mean, that's from an end user's point of view, that's where I see the challenge is that, it's wonderful to have technology, but if technology doesn't help me solve my problem, it may solve the company's problem. It may make their life easier. It may make things easier for them internally. But if they're not making things easier for their customer, then the customer is stuck in the same old situation. Doesn't matter how good the technology is, and the customer is sitting there grumbling about, oh God, a $2,000 bill just showed up for my insurance policy again. Maybe I'll go shop it around and see if there's a better policy, because they're not seeing the value.
Ironically, you've touched on very well, and I've got some folks that fight me on this, but insurance is a commodity. It's contractual, and people will say it's not a commodity. But what do all the insurance companies, the big ones, they advertise on price.
Right.
I'm going to save you $100. I'm going to save you whatever. When push comes to shove, most customers have never had a claim.
Yeah.
So all they see is the premium dollars, and they'll shop. But when a claim happens, that's where the rubber meets the road, to use an old marketing phrase. Are you servicing your customer well? Is technology assisting that customer being resolved without the customer knowing? Because the customer doesn't care.
Yeah.
If they have a loss, they're happy if, on one hand, if you just hand them a check. They don't care how you get to it. But they want to know what's coming next.
Yes.
What is coming next? Because
it's the communication piece.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's the we're sorry for your loss. Here's the things that we're doing today to be able to take care of you right now. Here's the things that are coming down the pipe, and this is how we're going to continually help you until this problem is resolved. And some companies do this very well, and some of the companies not so much. And unfortunately, when you're buying the policy, you have no idea. You have no idea until you're in the middle of a claim. You have no idea how good an insurance company you have is or is not. And it doesn't matter if it's insurance business or if it's any other business. Most companies, can do what they do, every day well, as long as things are going right. It's when things go wrong
Mm-hmm.
and you still have to take care of the customer. That's what proves whether you're a good company, a bad company, or a great company.
Right, and then that if you take that to a little descriptive position, if you take Lemonade, they
Right.
deal with a lot of renters. So if you lose your
There's
bicycle,
a lot. We got plug number 2 going on.
exactly. Well, that's the best way for people watching the podcast, and the best way for me to make comparatives.
Absolutely, I'm
If
all
there's
for it.
if there's a bicycle that's lost or stolen,
Right.
Lemonade's bot's going to pay you in 3 seconds.
Wow.
Right? But if you have a bicycle that's stolen, all right, I get my money, I go get another bicycle.
Right.
Take that to the other extreme. Your house is totally destroyed by a fire. And the carrier says, yep, we say it's destroyed by fire. Here's your check for $362,412. What do you do with the check? Do you go put it in a hole where the house used to be and hope it grows? Somebody has to help the customer understand what comes next.
Right.
And in the insurance contract doesn't say they have to do it.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're trying to differentiate yourself as a carrier, money is where you differentiate the purchase. But to differentiate for keeping that customer, and that's where the money's made in insurance, is retention, is
Right.
how you serve them. And every customer, we go back to, is it the spot in the ceiling or the total loss? Every customer needs a different level and type of service. And that's the important piece.
Absolutely.
That is our insurance person, or every employee needs a different approach. So your brand is trust. Your brand is adjusting your customer first before you deal with the service. So it's interesting. InsurTech is great. I just don't think it's hit the big piece yet. Jeffrey Tatro out of North Carolina, he speaks a lot about InsurTech is great, but are we touching all the people who need the service in the world, or are there underserved people?
Mm-hmm.
That's another piece of it. You can't just stick to whoever you're coming to. You've got to broaden beyond just that claim customer. And if there's people who need the assistance in the insurance world through networking or whatever, you've got to help those customers as well.
Right.
So there's three plugs, by the way.
It's interesting because you brought up AI, and AI is everybody's talking about AI. It's artificial intelligence is the sexy thing today. Mm-hmm. I've seen great AI, and I've seen horrific AI. The great AI allows the end user to be asked a series of questions, and as soon as the computer can't answer any more questions, or it's too complex for the computer to deal with, i.e. it needs a human being, it kicks you out to the right human being who's got your information already on screen, already logged in, knows who you are, what your issue is, and can automatically start helping you out. And then there's AI that as soon as you get frustrated, you're screaming customer service, human being, real person, and hope to God the machine will actually figure this out. And then when you finally do get kicked over to somebody else, they have no idea who you are or what your problem is.
And you have to recount it.
And you have to recount it. And just that little difference is the difference between the poor customer service rep on the other side having a client they can actually sit down and work with, or somebody that they're going to have to spend 10 minutes listening to because this person's frustrated because they've already recounted all this information and now they have to do it again.
Right, and think about the two scenarios. You have one where the employee is empowered, knowing what's there, and their highest and best value is resolving problems.
You betcha.
As opposed to the second person who continuously deals with persons who are, number one, upset. Number two, the employee doesn't understand what information is, and they have to rebuild it, which builds the frustration for the customer. So all day they're dealing with that. Eventually that person gets frustrated to the point of departing the company because what they were promised by their employers that they would be helping people solve problems, and all they're doing is putting out fires. It's a real big problem, and your point's well taken.
And the turnover of those employees is astounding. And all of a sudden, not only do you have customer service issues, but you have HR issues, and you have hiring issues, and you have all the back end issues of the, because all of a sudden, not only are you dealing with, having to deal with the employees leaving, but now you've got to hire new employees, and now you have to train them. And the expense involved in doing that is probably way more than setting up the systems right in the first place.
Or what if the C-suite says, why isn't our customer service department doing well? Maybe we should offshore it. Yeah. Now you've got it somewhere else and you're building even new problems. So really, the customer service piece is design. InsurTech, great. Technology, innovate, do whatever you want. Design it well. Yes. Train people, make training part of that design. Mm-hmm. Training, and then have the training be continuous, and recognize that all the rote stuff needs to be sifted out of your process. Let AI take care of that.
Right.
And use your staff for the highest and best value that they have, and that's interacting. So if I look at that with H2M, we've got engineers that go out and look at people's houses. All right, their expertise is looking at it and writing reports. My expertise may be understanding what the adjuster needs, and then whispering in the engineer's ear, here's what we need to do on this one that's a little different than the last one.
Right.
Every case can't be the same. So we have to do the same thing. Otherwise, the carriers, there's a lot of engineers around. How does H2M differentiate itself from all the other national vending engineers? Well, we need to be prompt. We need to be thorough. We need to be prompt in our reports. We need to do things that the carrier needs and not just boilerplate everything.
Right.
And that's, for the insurance world, it's the same idea. Understand, adjust the customer first. Train your staff very well. And get rid of all the junk that's in your process. Let AI do that type of thing.
Exactly. So let me ask you one last question, and then I'll let you go. There's a question I ask everybody. Mm-hmm. When you're leaving a meeting, when you're walking out of the room, when you close the door, when you drive away, what is the one thing that you want people to think about you, the company you work for, and the solutions that you provide?
And I'm in those situations a lot. If I do a seminar, I do a presentation in front of some special investigators for insurance carriers. They're looking at, how am I going to deal with the fraud in the world? I'm looking at it, well, I'm an engineer. I want your company to use me for things. I need to, again, adjust that presentation so that their takeaway matches up with what their upfront expectation is. They wanted to spend time to learn something to make their job easier, better, more productive, more lucrative, whatever you want to call it. Mm-hmm. So when I'm done and I walk out, I'm hopeful that their takeaway is, oh yeah, he talked about fire investigation for engineering, but now I know, depending on certain things that they find, I can apply that to a fraud investigation.
Right.
Because obviously their goal is to not pay claims that are fraud, or in the ultimate is to get somebody arrested for fraud.
Right.
So customizing what I do in every presentation, every discussion, understand what their end hope is, to take away some little thing that they can use, as opposed to, oh yeah, Pat said X, Y, and Z, and it's all stuff for them. And, I don't want them to think I was only speaking to my needs.
Right.
Really. And I know that sounds kind of stupid, but I try to customize that. Any communication, any connection on LinkedIn, what is it that person has that I can help with?
Right.
And hopefully that takeaway, it's every communication, not just presentations or anything. Everything I need to add value to them every time.
Right. And that's a big thing is if customers believe that you have their best interest at heart, if you're the one advocating for them, if you're the one who understands where their pain point is, they'll look to see, wait a second, maybe he does have a solution that can fix our problem. If it's all about you, they can't say, well, we don't need this and we don't need that and we don't need the other thing, because that's what Pat does. Yeah. But wait a second, Pat took the time to understand what we do, what our needs are, where our pain points are, what our challenges are. And he understands that. So maybe he's the right person to be able to fix those problems.
Yeah, I'll give you an apt example to finish this up with. In the insurance world, property insurance, about a third of all claims are declined coverage.
Mm-hmm.
That's a tough conversation when an adjuster's sitting in someone's living room and says, you've got this damage. It's not covered.
Right.
But then if you explain why, and then you say, well, I know it's not covered, but I do know a few things about this, and if you do this, this, and this, you might be able to get this fixed without too much cost, or talk to this type of an expert to help you out. If you understand what they need to take care of their concern, because again, they're not looking for you to settle their claim.
Right.
They're looking to have a fixed house.
Yeah.
And if you walk away and they understand how to fix their house, yeah, they're disappointed that the insurance company didn't pay, but if they know how to fix their house,
they're well on their way to recovery.
And they will stay as a customer.
Yes.
Even though you told them something they didn't want to hear. They weren't shopping for an insurance claim settlement. They were shopping for a fixed house.
Yeah.
So that's my best example of
perfect.
Walking away.
And we're going to leave it there. Pat, thank you very much. You've been a great guest.
Yeah.
And hang out in the green room. I'll be right back, and we'll say goodbye.
All right. Thanks, Ben.
I hope you enjoyed our conversation with Pat. You know, it's all about understanding how do you take care of individual people, because you know what? As human beings, we're all different. We're all unique, and we all have different needs and wants and desires and hopes and fears, and we all trust differently. And the more you can understand that your customers are human beings and not just a number, and they all need to be recognized and heard and understood, the better off you're going to be. Now, Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, my name is Ben Baker and my company is Your Brand Marketing. We want to help you tell your story. How can we help you engage your customers in a meaningful way and have them turn around and tell that story for you? But every Wednesday at 10 o'clock on the Pacific Coast, there's a YourLIVINGBrand.live show. So come and join us next week.